Hey YouTube, today I just wanted to do a video basically to answer a few questions that I had been receiving through my email. And the first question is simply regarding whether or not purchasing a motorcycle is a cost-effective way to basically transport oneself. So I'll give you the scenario. Basically, I know of a few families that are in need of a second vehicle. So they have a car, but the husband and wife both work outside of the house. So they essentially need a second mode of transportation. And the question I was receiving was, is purchasing a motorcycle cost effective in comparison to buying, maybe a used car or something like that? And so I kind of thought about this, and I guess at this point, because I've had a motorcycle for a while, I also own a car. I can compare the cost of purchasing and maintaining a motorcycle to that of purchasing and maintaining a car. And surprisingly, contrary to what I first believed, I don't really think that buying a motorcycle is that much less expensive than purchasing and maintaining a car. And I think part of the reason is because initially when you're purchasing a motorcycle, you're kind of excited about the prospect of having one, and so you don't really spend too much time thinking about all of the extra costs that go along with it. It's not just purchasing the motorcycle, which is going to cost you, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, depending upon whether you buy used. It'll probably even be more than that if you buy it new. And then, on top of that, you have to get your license if you're somebody who doesn't already have your license. So you may have to pay for a training course, which may cost you a few hundred, depending upon where you are, what course you choose. And then after you get through paying that few hundred, you got to pay for the cost of the license, the cost of registering the motorcycle. So that's going to be another few $100s, and you still haven't insured it yet. And I pay more in insurance for my motorcycle than I do for my car. And so it's not really well, there is no real savings as far as insurance is concerned. I guess maybe if I shopped around a little bit more, I could have found a better deal. But again, the costs add up. And then on top of that, you have to buy motorcycle gear. You have to have a helmet, preferably a quality helmet, and you'll probably want a jacket. If you want to ride on a day like this where it's about 56 degrees, you're going to need, maybe a good leather jacket, and then one that you can ride in the summer. And you probably want some motorcycle boots, some gloves, maybe even some riding pants or something like that. And essentially, you're spending quite a bit of money. So you're talking about maybe somewhere around $5,000 to $10,000 just to get started on a motorcycle. And so, you're talking about quite a bit of money. And then when you take into account the fact that there is an inherent danger with riding a motorcycle, obviously chances of getting in an accident aren't that much greater than riding in a car. But the problem is that if you do get in an accident on a motorcycle, you're significantly more likely to suffer a serious injury. And so if you offset that with the added protection you get in a car, you kind of have to decide whether or not that's really a good idea, especially if you're somebody who plans on purchasing a motorcycle to use it for commuting to and from work every day. That means you're in rush hour traffic on a daily basis. Rush hour traffic is horrendous, especially if you're in a metropolitan area, very crowded. I'm in the DC area, so it's one of the worst, not as bad as LA or somewhere around in that area, but it's pretty hectic. And so I purposely refuse to ride in rush hour traffic. I refuse, because I've been rear-ended in my car, and I can't even imagine what kind of injury I would suffer if I was on my motorcycle and got rear-ended. So in spite of the fact that I might try to drive safely for the most part, I can't necessarily control how other people operate their vehicles on the road. But you do the best that you can. But back to what I'm saying, with regard to the cost, I think that you do save money with fuel costs. Obviously, motorcycles even if you get up to 1,000 cc's, they're going to be better on fuel than most V6 cars and maybe even 4-cylinders. The smart cars, on the other hand, they actually have fuel economy that's comparable to most motorcycles. So if you can afford a smart car, that might actually be better as far as fuel economy is concerned. And also, in addition to the fuel savings, there are obviously liberties you can take on a motorcycle that you can't take in a car. You know, there are places you can fit. You know, if you're in a safe place, you can of course lane split, which will help save you some time. But again, there's added danger when you do those things, when you take those liberties. But it's fun nonetheless. So I guess essentially my point is, you kind of have to really just sit down, work through the numbers, because there are hidden costs here and there that you may not be thinking about, that, you know, they add up. And of course, you know, riding a motorcycle is an adventure. It's fun. I wouldn't trade it. I enjoy riding my motorcycle. I have a car on top of that, but it costs money. The maintenance on a motorcycle is roughly, well, actually, I would say it might even be more expensive than a car. I mean, an oil change on a motorcycle, you probably want to do that yourself, because to pay a shop to do it is just unnecessary. Unfortunately, there are, at least as far as I know, there's no oil changers or Jiffy Lube for a motorcycle, and so you either have to take it to a shop or do it yourself. Now, you know, that's just, I guess, a quick talk on the costs of owning a motorcycle. I think that depending upon how you plan on using your motorcycle, it can be worthwhile. I use mine for recreation only. I just ride it on my off days, you know, just because I enjoy it. I don't commute on a motorcycle. I refuse to do so. Especially because, you know, motorcycle, I don't want to ride it in the rain, and it snows in DC from time to time, so I of course don't want to ride it in the snow. So the utility of a motorcycle is limited in comparison to a car. And so you just kind of have to, again, work through the numbers, decide whether or not this is actually cost effective, because especially if your finances are tight, you might have to hold off on a motorcycle. You might. That is, of course, unless you can find a good motorcycle for a great deal, and maybe you already have your license, you got a little bit of gear or something. In that way you can supplement your costs. But otherwise, it's going to be somewhat expensive. So that's pretty much what I wanted to say about whether or not a motorcycle is cost effective in comparison to purchasing a car.